Welcome to another edition of Test Drive Diecast. Tonight I'm going to be reviewing for you the early versions of the Corgi Classics 1/4 scale Morris Minor 1000. Corgi introduced their range of classic cars in 1988, and the first model that they released was the Morris Minor Saloon. They had released the Morris Minor van in, I think it was about 1986 or 1987, but this was the first year that they had released the saloon version. I remember I always wanted a model of a Morris Minor around about that time. There was quite a poor, looking back, but at the time I enjoyed it, a comedy programme on television. I think Morris Minor's Marvellous Motors or something it was called on BBC television. On seeing that, I just really wanted a model of a Morris Minor, and it wasn't something that was generally available. The only one you could get was the spot-on Triang version, which was well out of my price range. So in Christmas 1988, Santa Claus brought me this particular one you see here. I've had it for a long time, along with the Rolls Royce, which I reviewed earlier in my channel. And I remember again opening this one at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I remember when I opened it, I remember particularly the shiny box and the writing on the box are the two things that stick in my memory. Unfortunately, I don't have a box for this particular car anymore. In 1988, they released 3 versions of the Morris Minor that I'm aware of. They released the first one, which they released was the Panda, I'll come to that in a minute. And the other 2 they released were this one in Trafalgar Blue, and they also released one in black, which had just on the front bumper about their driving school placards, and it also had an Irish number plate. So what we'll do is we'll look at quick look at the model of this one here, which is out of the box. Then we'll look at the box, and then I'm going to show you something interesting that you may or may not know about this particular casting of the Morris Minor. So this was the first of this type of 1/4 scale model to be released in the UK, aimed at collectors. They weren't toys, although they're very sturdily made. I'm thinking that's perhaps part of the purpose of making them slightly sturdier, to recreate not only the image of the real car, but recreate some of the feel of the old dinky models that you used to get. There have been lots of releases of the Morris Minor over the years. This particular casting, I believe, is still going. I've never seen one that betters this particular casting. Although I would quite like to compare it with the 1/18 scale Mini Champs Morris Minors. The only thing about those is that they don't really recreate the look and feel of the old-fashioned dinky toy cars that you used to get. Quite well detailed for its day. We've got separate light lenses, separate grille surround and grille, various details picked out on here, bonnet handle and hinges. You can just make out there it's got the clap hands or centrally parking wipers, which marks this one out as a 1960 model. This particular model is pretty well worn. I took it everywhere with me. I remember taking it to school with me. I really liked it a lot. So it's not in the best of condition, but you know, it's mine. Had detailed rubber tyres with bright centre caps. I think the rubber actually extends all the way to the centre for some reason. Probably not see too much of the interior because the glass is pretty grubby. I very much doubt they're going to focus in on that. It's just going to focus in on the dirt. There is actually a centrally mounted speedometer there. No, we're not going to see through the dirt there. Never mind. So, looking at the back, again, lights picked out, bumpers nicely moulded. It's pretty much a perfect casting in my opinion. That recreates the scale and look of the car perfectly. Nothing's out of proportion. I sellotaped the number plate on years ago, and the sellotape's fallen off, but for some reason the number plate has remained. That's PGV929H. And a nice Trafalgar blue colour. It's always my favourite colour of Morris Minor. Turn to the base. basically detailed. Again, you can tell it's an early one because it's made in Great Britain. Nice and solid though, great feel to the model. These can be picked up for a few pounds now. So we'll go ahead and have a look at the box, and we'll have a little bit of a look at the police one. As I say, I remember the box of these well. Nice sort of 1950s sort of chrome here, 1950s script. I remember that all very well. Excellent piece of packaging. And then on the side we've got the code name. The very early Corgi classic cars were numbered C703, whereas later ones were numbered D. It just tells you a little bit about the car. And just some information on the back there about days gone by. If you so wish, you can pause it and have a read, but if you're probably familiar with all what's on there if you've collected these cars. It does mention here sturdy die-cast metal models to reflect the pedigree of the original cars, and I think that they're pretty correct in that. And then underneath, here's Corgi Toys. This is when they were in Swansea. They moved to Leicester in the early 1990s. So that, again, this dates it nicely. And there we see there 1988. That's the year I got my first one. This particular one here, again, was the Panda car, and it's got a Dundee registration, PES 645J. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my blue one. Now, hopefully the camera will be able to focus in on the both of them. Okay, so what we'll do, I said there were 3 issued in 1988, but that's actually a bit of a lie. There were actually 4, because on the Police Panda there were actually 2 releases of these. The first casting, which I have here, I searched long and hard to get a first issue Panda car, and the reason it's interesting I'll explain. So in this particular casting there are a number of errors, and whilst you might look at it and you think, oh, that doesn't look too bad. First thing, a few things that Corgi weren't happy with, and they basically went back to the drawing board with the Morris Minor and re-released it. First thing you'll notice, this quarter light pillar here is quite thick, and you'll see on this one that it's thin. Now the next thing you'll notice is you'll see, I'll just try and focus in on that if I can. It's not focusing on it too well. You'll see there's a bit of a lip. And what happened was that the wing doesn't curve round to meet the headlamp, whereas on this one, as you can see, it flows into the headlamp just nicely. That was another thing they were not happy with. Another thing, you mentioned the windscreen wipers on the windscreen. As you can see there. And on this particular one, there's nothing at all. There's also no rear view mirror either. Rear view mirror on that one. You can see there. The next thing, it's got quite chunky tyres on that. They look a bit toy-like, a bit like winter tyres, and they're also a bit big for the wheel arch. And for this one, they just scaled them down a little bit, and these look a lot more realistic, like cross-ply tyres. The other difference existed solely between the 2 police versions, and you can see this police sign slopes in towards the bottom, whereas the later one, the police sign, was a lot more robust looking and it was more of a prism shape. So there were actually 2 issues of this Panda car, so if you happen to own this particular Corgi model car, have a look to see if you've got the first issue one, because then you've got something that's pretty interesting. The article was published in the Corgi Collector magazine early on in 1989, so it's obviously taking a wee look back at 1988, and it explained why there were 2 issues, and ever since then I've wanted to try and get a first issue Panda car, which I've now got. This model was absorbed into the Vanguard range, and they also updated the casting and made a traveller version and a convertible version to complement the van and the saloon that were already available. But for me, it's the saloon version that I favour. So if you've got any further questions about the Corgi Morris Minor in 1/4 scale, please give me a quick message in the comments box below. Oh, it's also worth mentioning as well, just before I sign off, that the actual box itself was only issued with the early Corgi classic cars. After that, they came in a very brittle and ugly clear Perspex box with only a small amount of cardboard on it. So again, if you've got one that's got this particular early box, hold on to it, because it's quite interesting. As I say, any other questions, just leave me a comment, and please subscribe if you so wish. Thanks, bye.